Tonight, you will see the incredible images from Vatican City. Pope Francis carried through the crowds, tens of thousands coming to see him. In the U.S., breaking news at this hour, what President Trump said just moments ago about his tariffs on China. And in New Jersey and New York City at this hour, concern over air quality amid this massive fire. First tonight, the powerful images from St. Peter's Square. Bells tolling as Pope Francis is carried through the enormous crowds gathered there. The people's Pope with the people again. More than 25,000 coming to see him, and James Longman is in the crowd for us. Here in the U.S. tonight, the massive fire burning in New Jersey, the state of emergency right now. And now the air quality alerts right into New York City tonight. Breaking news, President Trump just moments ago and what he said about China and his 145% tariffs on all Chinese goods coming into the U.S. And tonight, who blinks first, the U.S. or China? And are President Trump and President Xi talking? Major developments tonight involving Ukraine. President Trump lashing out at President Zelenskyy after Zelenskyy does not agree to what the U.S. proposed, which called for Ukraine giving up the land taken by Russia since the invasion and Crimea. Vice President Vance tonight warning, say yes, or it's time for the U.S. to walk away. In Boston tonight, the dramatic testimony in the Karen Reed murder trial, accused of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend. Tonight, you will hear his mother as she takes the stand. The scare in the U.S., the chemical leak, extremely flammable and potentially cancerous. How they're trying to get it under control tonight. This evening, legendary musician Carlos Santana has been hospitalized, suffering a medical emergency before a concert. And tonight here, the father who just won a $1 million scratch-off, and we got a kick out of how he plans to spend it.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a very busy Wednesday night. And we begin tonight with the stunning and moving sight from Vatican City. More than 25,000 people coming to see Pope Francis as he was carried through St. Peter's Square. The bells tolling as the Pope's open coffin was carried across St. Peter's Square through thousands of the faithful. We took note as we watched the images come in. It was the people's Pope among the people again. Carried to rest at the front of St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Francis lying in state at the Basilica for 3 days now. And at his request, his simple wooden coffin has been placed at ground level, not elevated, so that those gathering can see him. He wanted to be on their level. Tens of thousands making their way to the Basilica, many quietly standing in line, others in tears, filing by the Pope's coffin to pay their respects, to offer a prayer, to say goodbye. The funeral is Saturday morning, 4 a.m. here in the East. I'll be at the Vatican with our team, and we'll carry it live for everyone back here in the U.S., right here on ABC. But tonight here, that moving sight, the Pope carried through the people, and our James Longman was in the crowd.
By the tens of thousands tonight, they came to see Pope Francis one last time, to say goodbye. More than 25,000 people from all walks of life waiting for hours in massive lines to honor the people's Pope. Francis lying in state in his simple wooden coffin, a stark contrast to the gilded splendor of St. Peter's Basilica.
The great mission of Pope Francis' life was to take the message from the church, go out into the world and meet people where they are. Well, now thousands of people have come to meet him as he lies in rest at St. Peter's Basilica. And they're coming from all over the world. Young, old, entire families are lining up, and they know that they are part of history now.
The day began with this solemn ceremony, led by Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the former Dallas bishop.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Some of the very cardinals who will choose the next pope, joining bishops and the papal Swiss Guard as white-gloved pallbearers carried Francis on their shoulders from his residence to the Basilica. Slowly winding through St. Peter's Square, the crowd of thousands applauding. This pope wanted them close. The procession taking a similar route Francis took on his last ride in the Popemobile on Easter Sunday, finally making its way inside. His coffin carefully placed in front of the altar facing the pews, not on an elevated stand or on a board like past pontiffs. In a church full of ancient symbolism, Francis knew the power of this simple act of humility. Yannick from Quebec waiting nearly 4 hours to see him.
I feel like it's someone from my family. And I don't know why, because I really don't know him a lot, you understand? But I don't know why, I just feel... In French, I will say, je suis émue.
She was clearly moved.
Yeah, I don't know why.
In your eyes.
I don't know why, because I love the way he was, you see, and that way of trying to put people together, that was great for me.
We met Lissy from North Carolina.
How did you feel when you were in front of him?
So blessed.
Really?
So blessed and so happy.
Late today, the Cardinals meeting at the Vatican, acknowledging they'll be meeting every day. Their next big task, the conclave. More than 100 cardinals will choose the next pope. Francis appointed 80% of them. Francis has kept some traditions. When he's buried in St. Mary Major, he will wear his pallium, a scarf-like garment and a symbol of his status as a good shepherd. A bag of coins featuring his portrait and a document summarising his papacy will be buried with him, both to identify him and his extraordinary work. But his other wish was just to have the name Franciscus on his plain tomb. Tonight, Francis lies in his simple wooden coffin in a basilica built to celebrate the history and wealth of the Church. These competing forces, reform or tradition, now occupy the minds of the cardinals who must choose his successor.
Just extraordinary reporting, James, taking us all right into the square there with you. James Longman back with us again tonight, and just an extraordinary scene. You did report the cardinals will be meeting daily now, discussing the future of the Church. So we know with the funeral Saturday, when then is the earliest that the conclave would actually begin? And once it starts, how long does it usually take before a new pope is chosen?
Well, David, cardinals have scheduled multiple days of mourning with events every day. So the earliest it could possibly be is May 5th. Remember, they've come from all over the world, so they need time to get to know each other. As for the decision and that famous white smoke appearing over the Sistine Chapel to tell the world there is a new pope, well, with Francis, it took 2 days for him to be elected. This time round, we can't possibly know, but we'll be watching. David?
James Longman will be watching right here with you. I'll be traveling to the Vatican to join James, Terry Moran, Deborah Roberts, and our entire team for the Pope's funeral. ABC News live coverage begins at 3:30 in the morning, Saturday morning. We hope you'll get up with us early Saturday. And of course, we'll all be there for the ancient ritual, the conclave that James just mentioned. But we'll see you first Saturday morning for that funeral. In the meantime, we turn to the other news this Wednesday night. The wildfire emergency in New Jersey at this hour, triggering air quality alerts all the way into New York City and Long Island for tonight and tomorrow. Look at the images tonight. More than 12,000 acres already burning, thousands forced to evacuate at this hour. The power's still out for many more. It could be the worst wildfire in New Jersey in 20 years. Trevor Ault on the scene for us.
Tonight, a state of emergency in southern New Jersey. An explosive wildfire tripling in size in less than 24 hours.
This could very well end up being the largest wildfire in New Jersey in 20 years.
The Jones Road fire reported around 9:45 Tuesday morning about 90 miles south of New York City in Barnegat Township, quickly spreading to neighboring communities.
We're gonna lose this.
Volunteer firefighter Mike Berger shooting this video on the scene. The flames jumping the Garden State Parkway during rush hour. Officials forced to shut it down for miles overnight. This commercial building left in ruins, and authorities cutting power to some 25,000 homes and businesses.
This fire right now is staying low to the ground. It's burning down in the brush. These are all the pine barrens down here, so there's plenty of fuel to make this fire burn.
3,000 people forced to flee.
The authorities were knocking on everyone's door, letting us know to evacuate.
Yanira Luna, one of many making use of emergency shelters. In just over a day, the Jones Road fire destroying 12,500 acres.
And David, officials say new hotspots continue to pop up. You see several of them smoldering here behind me. Crews will be battling this fire for days, and it could char thousands more acres. David?
Trevor Ault, thanks for being on the scene for us. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg of our station here in New York, WABC. And Lee, as you heard, these air quality alerts spread right into New York City tonight and tomorrow.
Indeed, David, and there's already a hint of haze in New York City, but skies could be a lot smokier tomorrow. Air quality alerts in effect near the fire in South Jersey, but they'll start at midnight in New York City, Long Island, the Hudson Valley. The winds are shifting. Let's track the smoke. It'll reach New York City during the late evening, but the winds strengthen during the day tomorrow, and that could spread some of that smoke all the way to the Hudson Valley and even into Connecticut, meaning poor air quality for really sensitive groups. Now, we'll get some rainy relief with this over the weekend. That's coming from a storm in the middle of the country. Severe weather tonight over the plains from Texas to Kansas. Maybe some damaging winds and hail, scattered storms over the southeast. David?
Lee Goldberg back with us tonight. Lee, thanks as always. Now to the other breaking news. President Trump just moments ago and what he said about his 145% tariffs on China, on all Chinese goods coming into the U.S. Will the U.S. or China blink first? And are President Trump and President Xi talking? Here's Jonathan Karl.
Tonight, a big shift in tone from the White House and questions about whether President Trump is preparing to back down in his trade war with China. as both sides signal they're ready to talk.
We are going to have a fair deal with China. It's going to be fair.
Are you talking to them actively now?
Actively. Everything's active.
China has been defiant since President Trump imposed a staggering 145% tariff on all Chinese goods imported to the United States. But today, a spokesperson for the Chinese government said China does not want a trade war. We will fight if we must, he said. Our doors are open if the U.S. wants to talk. If a negotiated solution is truly what the U.S. wants, it should stop threatening and blackmailing China. President Trump's tariffs have rattled the economy, the stock market having its worst April in more than a half century. Fears of inflation and recession. Monday, representatives from Walmart, Target, and Home Depot met with President Trump, warning his tariffs would soon cause empty store shelves in the U.S. A new poll shows anxiety among Americans. Just 37% approve of Trump's handling of the economy, an issue at the heart of his campaign and a big part of his win in November. The message today from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reflecting a shift from the talk of a trade war.
I wish to be clear, America first does not mean America alone. To the contrary, it is a call for deeper collaboration and mutual respect among trade partners.
Secretary Bessent echoing the words of Joe Biden's Treasury Secretary.
America first must never mean America alone.
Tonight, the president was asked if he is ready to cut his 145% tariffs on China, which his Treasury Secretary acknowledged amounts to a trade embargo.
How soon do you want to bring the tariffs on Chinese goods?
Well, that depends on them.
All right, so let's bring in John Karl tonight. This seems to be a major game of chicken on the global stage, John, with the U.S. economy and, of course, Americans going to the store caught right in the middle. The president has said many times, as you know, John, that he's got a very good relationship with China's President Xi. So what are your sources telling you? Are President Trump and President Xi even talking here?
Oh, that's a good question. President Trump has clearly implied that he has spoken to President Xi. Remember, Rachel Scott asked him if she had reached out to him, and he said it would be pretty obvious that he has. I called the Chinese embassy today, and I asked the White House very directly, have the two men spoken? Neither side would answer the question.
You'll stay on it. John Karl live at the White House for us. John, good to see you. Now to those major developments involving Ukraine tonight. President Trump lashing out at President Zelenskyy after Zelenskyy did not agree to what the U.S. proposed, which called for Ukraine giving up the land taken by Russia since the invasion and Crimea. Here's Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, President Trump lashing out at Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on social media, writing, "He can have peace or he can fight for another 3 years before losing the whole country. The man with no cards to play should now finally get it done." Trump angered by Zelenskyy's refusal to accept a U.S. proposed peace deal that would prohibit NATO membership for Ukraine and would include Ukraine giving up land that Russia has seized since its invasion, in addition to giving up Crimea. Zelenskyy saying, "There's nothing to talk about. It is our territory, the territory of the Ukrainian people." Vice President J.D. Vance threatened to end the negotiations if Ukraine does not accept the U.S. proposal that calls for Ukraine to give up land to Russia.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process.
President Trump did just say moments ago from the Oval Office that he believes Russia is ready to make a deal. Of course, Russia would be the country making gains in the deal. David?
Martha Raddatz with us tonight as well. Thank you, Martha. Now to Boston tonight and the dramatic testimony at the retrial of Karen Reed, accused of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend. Tonight, you will hear the officer's mother as she takes the stand for the first time. Here's Matt Gutman.
The Commonwealth calls Peggy O'Keefe.
Today, gut-wrenching testimony at the second murder trial of Karen Reed, the former professor accused of backing her SUV into her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, and leaving him to die in a blizzard. More than 3 years after losing her son, Peggy O'Keefe breaking her silence, recalling the moment she saw his battered body in the hospital.
He's bruised up, his eyes were closed. Just not a good scene.
Peggy testified the defendant, Karen Reed, shouted at her in that hospital hallway.
I hear Karen Reed yell, "Peg, is he dead? Is he dead, Peg? Peg, is he dead?"
John O'Keefe's mom says Karen told her she dropped him off at a party.
She said, we went to a party. I left him there. I said, you just left him there?
But the defense claims Karen didn't kill John. They say he was killed after she dropped him off at the home of another cop. And today, one of John O'Keefe's oldest friends, Carrie Roberts, who drove Karen to help search for him, grilled by Reed's defense attorney.
Did you lie?
I did not intentionally. I said I misunderstood the question, Mr. Jackson.
The case has divided the town of Canton. Neighbors have taken sides. And key witnesses like Carrie Roberts, one of John's oldest friends, speaking exclusively to GMA, saying they've been harassed and threatened. For the crime of?
Telling the truth. It's my friend. I'm not going to not help. It's all about which side are you on. We're John's closest friends and family, and we're still haven't been able to grieve because of all of this. It's all lost on this circus.
And David, that first trial ended with a deadlocked jury and a mistrial. This retrial is expected to last somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks. And if she's convicted of that second-degree murder charge, Karen Reed could face up to life in prison, David.
All eyes in Boston watching this, and now much of the country, too. Matt, thank you. From Capitol Hill tonight, Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, the number 2 Senate Democrat, announcing he will not seek re-election next year. Durbin is in his 5th term in the Senate after serving 14 years in the House. And at 80 years old, he says it's time to pass the torch. Durbin is now the 4th Senate Democrat to say they will not run again next year. When we come back here tonight, the medical emergency for music legend Carlos Santana. More in a moment. And the images here tonight, the scare in the U.S., the chemical leak, extremely flammable and potentially cancerous. The race to get it under control in a moment here. Tonight, here the images coming in from Houston. Emergency crews racing to contain a dangerous chemical leak on board a barge there. Authorities say a broken valve released a vapor form of butadiene. Colorless and odorless, it's potentially flammable, explosive, and cancerous. The leak has been contained tonight. Authorities now saying there's no threat to the community. When we come back here tonight, legendary musician Carlos Santana suffering a medical emergency and what we've just learned about it in a moment here. To the index of other news tonight, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Carlos Santana suffering a medical emergency in San Antonio, Texas. He is now 77. He reportedly fainted before his concert last night. And just moments ago tonight, a spokesperson now revealing he has tested positive for COVID. He's now resting at his hotel. Tonight's show postponed. He does say he hopes to resume his tour on Friday if he can. Tonight, a father in Illinois winning a $1 million scratch-off ticket, and he already knows one thing he'll buy. Staying anonymous, he told lottery officials he plans to pay his bills, and then he's splurging on VIP tickets for the Chicago Bulls next season for him and his son. They haven't been to a game in 8 years. I hope you're courtside. When we come back tonight, the new mom at 97 and the big reveal tonight. They lined up today to see the babies.
ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, sponsored by Pacific Life, creating financial security for nearly 160 years.
Finally tonight, the babies revealed. Tonight at the Philadelphia Zoo, it's their big debut, the incredibly rare sight. For the first time, the public able to see 4 critically endangered western Santa Cruz Galápagos tortoise hatchlings, little baby turtles. Less than 50 are known to exist in America. We first showed you the babies earlier this month. The Philadelphia Zoo's veterinary team caring for the eggs, watching them hatch, measuring the babies, feeding them. Tonight, the zoo telling us they are proud to protect the endangered population and proud of that 97-year-old mom, appropriately named Mommy.
Hi, David.
They say remarkably, she is a first-time mother at 97, now the oldest known first-time mother ever of her species.
She is our oldest and longest tenured resident, estimated hatching in 1928 and has been here since 1932. So she's about as Philly as it gets.
Today, families are lining up to see them. The zoo telling us the babies are thriving and exploring their new habitat. And tonight, you have a chance to help name them by voting on their website, philadelphiazoo.org. And by donating to their conservation fund, a chance to win a one-of-a-kind painting the babies made by walking across this canvas with green, non-toxic paint on their little feet. Tonight, the zoo happy to debut the babies and happy for that first-time mom at 97.
Congratulations, Mommy!
Our congratulations, too. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.